so we turned to our investors and we said, look, there's this big issue with what goes into these products that isn't being disclosed and no one knows about them, and potentially are affecting people's periods. And they're all being marketed through this language of shame.
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm a marketing exec at ONQOR, and today I'm chatting to Alec, the co-founder of the award-winning period care brand Dame, innovating period care products to tackle marine plastic pollution, expected to triple by 2040. Today, we chat about the road to creating the world's first reusable tampon, breaking the stigma around periods, and changing consumer attitudes to reusable products. Enjoy. So today I'm joined by Alec, the co-founder of the award-winning period care brand Dame. Welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's dive straight in. Can you talk me through the journey from that initial idea through to product development and creating a brand?
Sure. We are a sustainable period product brand, and our mission is to make products that are chemical-free, plastic-free, and shame-free. What we started with is very different to where we are now. We used to deliver period products on a subscription service through people's letterboxes, solving the problem of people not having access to essential products at that time of the month. And it was through doing that, literally packing tampons and pads on the floor of my flat, that we discovered just how much plastic there was. And these weren't our own products. These were like major brands of tampon and pad. And the idea is that we'd make bespoke boxes that had your mix of absorbencies, of liner, pad, tampon. And so we kind of experienced firsthand how much plastic waste there was. And we looked into it and we did some quick maths. And none of these products can be recycled. And 100 billion period products get thrown away every single year, and they all just go straight to landfill onto our ocean, into our oceans. And so we thought, well, let's make a tampon that doesn't do this. Make some pads that don't have plastic in. And it was whilst we were on that journey, speaking to some of the kind of wise wizards who make these products, that we discovered all the other things that go into period products. There are sort of phthalates, there's rayon, there's chlorine, there's plastic, petrochemicals, cotton grown with pesticides. It turns out there's over 3,000 different chemicals that can go into period products.
Oh wow, I didn't realise there were so many.
I know, right? No one does. Absolutely no one does. And this is a sort of thing that's kind of emerging. So we then had this second big truth, I guess, which is period products are full of shit. And I've got 3 daughters. I don't want them growing up with, using any of these products. And then the third thing was, when we were doing the research for this, we were in the supermarket. It was quite a sort of weird time in my life, loitering around the period product aisle doing research, trying not to get booted out. But we kind of noticed that on the packaging and how these things were advertised, they're called feminine hygiene products, hygiene enforcing this idea of them being dirty. One of the major brands sells their products, and one of their key advertising points is that the wrappers are silent when you open them, so that people in the next door cubicle don't know that you're on your period. We just thought, this is BS. This is all just mounting up to a really strong case study of why something needs to happen, basically. And so we turned to our investors and we said, look, there's this big plastic issue. There's this big issue with what goes into these products that isn't being disclosed and no one knows about them, and potentially are affecting people's periods. And they're all being marketed through this language of shame. We think there's an opportunity to create a brand that is for the 21st century, that talks about periods in the way it is, they're reusable, they're organic, and they do things better. And our sort of break onto market product is going to be the world's first reusable tampon applicator, which we launched on Kickstarter in 2018. And we haven't really looked back since.
That's amazing. So, and I guess with creating reusable products, there's always going to be trade-offs. So what was the biggest challenge that you faced when creating the world's first reusable tampon applicator?
Well, there's always blockers to reusable products because humans are lazy. And the moment there is a barrier to usage, people are going to get turned off. And even if it's coffee cups or water bottles, like unless it's super, super easy, the disposable option is always going to be the more appealing one. So that was always like something we had to think about. But really the biggest blocker is something that's got nothing to do with product. It's to do with how people with period think about their own bodies. And if you have been using, let's say, a Tampax Pearl your entire life and use an applicator and you haven't been engaging with your body and you haven't seen your period blood and you think it's something that's icky, you're never going to want to use a reusable product. So for us, breaking down that stigma and like reintroducing people to their bodies and getting them used to the idea of period blood and seeing it is probably the biggest thing that we can do to help people switch habits. And the way to do that is simply just talking about it very openly, normalizing it. There's no difference between blood, sweat, bogies, whatever it is that you put in your laundry. It's just like, right, it's dirty, put it in the laundry. For a lot of people, that is like the ultimate, barrier to overcome. So everyone's on this journey, and our I guess our strategy is to get people is to provide a full choice of products, with some products being really, really easy to use, low barrier to entry. And so that's just a simple switch from what you're doing now into that. And then as people get more comfortable, then we take them on this journey so that they can discover more and more products. And that kind of goes in tandem with how they are experiencing and being reintroduced to their body and their periods.
That makes a lot of sense, because I guess it's just like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because I remember when I first got my period, it was such a scary, daunting experience. And then over time, you get used to the different products and what works for your body. Have you found that over time, consumer attitudes have changed more? Or is it still quite a lot of work you have to go into like educating people?
Just when I think that the consumer attitudes have changed, something will come up and there'll be a comment on social media being like, this is disgusting, or, how everyone who uses cups is outrageous, or whatever it might be. I mean, as you can imagine on social media, the language is a bit more colourful, but there is still a hell of a lot of work to be done. I think the most important thing is that we've put a sort of peg in the wall. Like you can't really go back now from the doors that we've opened. And so just by having these options available, getting supermarkets to put on a range of different products, by championing like the removal of tax on period products, by pushing for no blue liquid in adverts, like all these things are irreversible. So it's only ever going to go, in one direction. But there will always be laggards. There will always be those people, those cultures, those belief systems, whatever it is, that will still think that periods are dirty or something to be hidden. But it's a slow moving, evolving process. But that's half the fun, I guess, of being in a business and making products and doing things that ultimately can improve people's lives beyond just the usage of them. Maybe we can create opportunities and uplift the lives and the experiences of everyone who uses them.
100%. Because in 2020, you launched your London bus ad campaign with a tampon string front and centre. So what was the thinking behind that?
There was no thinking. It was straight up. We were sent a photo of one of our customers, by one of our customers, dancing around in her bedroom with her tampon string hanging out, holding our products. And she was a sort of early stage influencer, and was kind of getting in contact with us to be like, look, these are some of the products that I use, and these are some of the images that I think are cool. But she did it with a tampon string hanging out, and I just thought that's so cool, and that represents kind of everything that we stand for. There's just pure positivity that comes out of this image, and there's a carefreeness, and there's also like a kind of beauty. It was a very well shot photo as well.
Yeah, it's a lovely image.
And I just thought that is exactly what I think, this whole process is about. And this is what a lovely like end vision of what it can be. So we're like, do you mind if we put you on the side of 200 London buses? And she said no. And weirdly, I thought that would be the difficult part of it. It was actually trying to get it past the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA, who, when we showed it, they're like, oh, no, I don't think you can show tampon strings on the side of buses. Like, there's not a precedent for this. It's like, well, why not? And this is where the conversations come, and this is where you realize just how slanted, obviously everyone knows about the patriarchal conversations that are going on, but it goes into every tiny fiber of like our society and our law system and everything. And they didn't at first do it, and we had to really, really push for it. And in the end, I think it was Global, who are the kind of guys who do the advertising on the side of buses, who eventually cracked and thought, actually, this might be an opportunity. Like, maybe we can. It's like, now you're thinking, guys, like maybe Global are the ones who actually crack the nut. And maybe like we work together in order to like make this thing happen. And we've now changed what is possible in advertising. So that was really exciting. And then we took that and we also put the same image in Vogue. Like, where is, like, I guess the sort of high-end culture, like where can we also put this image that might kind of create some new precedents? So we put it into Vogue, and it was great. And just because it was at the beginning of lockdown, we put the 200 buses out live on the road, and then lockdown happened, and they basically stayed up for 4 months, and they're supposed to be up for 2 weeks. So we got a lot of bang for our buck. But no, it was great, and it was really good fun doing it.
Yeah, perfect timing then. I guess, again, it's getting comfortable with what was traditionally seen as being uncomfortable. It's
all about how can you use your business as a force for good. And the bus campaign is like a very good example of that. Like, it's not just a bus campaign. It's actually a kind of campaign about the rights of how periods are portrayed.
More of a form of activism, really.
Yeah, exactly. And so, how can we make sure that all our marketing kind of does that? And I guess as B Corps, if everyone sort of maybe thought a little bit about that, it doesn't have to be every kind of form of marketing, because at some point you have to put out a boring Instagram advert. But how can we use our sort of collective spending power in order to like move things forward?
So taking it back to B Corp again, you collaborated with B Corp Finisterre on a reusable dry bag. How did that collaboration come about?
For me, I think that's really was like for Dame and the mission. That's a big part of what we're trying to do, is like bring the conversation about periods out from like the cupboard, and like into the real world, and try and weave it into the sort of fabric of other discourse, not just about blood management effectively, but like getting in with other brands and seeing how actually periods are not just something to be hidden. Actually, every single brand can tap into the power and the sort of normality of what happens to half the planet.
Yeah, because you very rarely see period care brands doing collaborations with any other brands, but if you think about it, it touches every part of a woman's life, really. So there are limitless collaborations you could generally do.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, come knocking.
Well, on that note, who would be your dream collaboration to do a collab with, and what kind of product would you like to create?
God, I think there's probably 3 different angles this answer could go in. I think probably one is a really, really ethical brand that just does things that are ahead of the curve. And I think, an obvious one is someone like Patagonia, who are always a decade ahead of everyone else, and they're so deeply authentic. So I think someone in that realm of like just doing things better, really good example of like what a business can be. I quite like the sort of punchiness of a kind of a Nike. and the sort of just do it and just go get them. I think that's probably part of that kind of drive of us, like bring Dame into the mainstream and bring periods into the mainstream. And I think there's probably quite a lot of tech in terms of like materials and tech in that sense, but also tech as in, Fitbits and that sort of tech. I think that could be quite a cool sort of collab. And then there's just brands that I love, like sort of Pangaea or someone who just, have just broken through by doing simple things really well and have touched a lot of people. And I think someone like them would be really good.
So thinking ahead, what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for sustainable brands in the next few years?
I think trying to sell products that are sustainable is going to be harder and harder, weirdly, as fashions change and more people make their products sustainable, and therefore the USP isn't there anymore. And the words, sustainable written on the side of your product is going to be the same as every other product on the shelf. So how do you, what else is it about your thing? And so I think that's going to be a challenge. And I think also the pressure on from the incumbent brands who claim to be doing things sustainably but aren't is going to be massively problematic, because they have a lot of power and they have a lot of, I guess, resources to throw at launching products and doing things and effectively blocking out challenges like us. I think the truth about how a product is made and how what's in it is going to be increasingly challenging. And I think that it's going to be increasingly challenging in general moving forward. So I think, those two things are going to probably be the very long-term things to sort of think about.
Well, hopefully we see brands being more transparent with their communications, because there's a growing awareness of greenwashing and a lot more consumers are aware of it now, which is difficult for the green brands because there's a decline in brand trust. So it's like, how do you navigate those?
Yeah, totally. And I think ultimately, in our category especially, but I think in every category, people really buy something because it performs well and it makes them feel good. So that still will always be number one. You'll never be able to get mainstream customers unless you have answered those two things first. And I think like a really good example of that is like Tony's Chocolonely. They're, removing slavery from their supply chain, but ultimately, if their chocolate wasn't insanely good as we know it is, they wouldn't be able to achieve that mission. So it's very much product first.
100%. And my final question for you today, what is the one mantra that you live by? Big question.
I don't really know if it's a mantra. I think like our sort of grandparents and great-grandparents' generation experienced this in the full during like the war, and any moment where there is a limit on supply and you therefore have to really put a value on what you have. And that might be, a gram of butter that they got given as their rations, or it might be fixing a jumper for the 1,000th time on your son who's been out playing in the rubble, whatever it might be. Use, reuse, fix, repair, buy off eBay, buy off Vinted. The pleasure you get from sourcing something secondhand on Vinted, eBay, whatever it might be, or your local car boot sale, whatever it is always the same as when you come back from Gucci with 1,000 handbags. Like it's the same feeling of like, I found it, it's now mine, and I own it, and it's come through the letterbox, and I'm really pumped about it.
Arguably even more satisfying to have to go through, find it, and you get those one-off unique pieces.
Yes, and just for the record, I've never bought anything from Gucci in my life, but I'm definitely not 100 handbags. But I think that's it. It's like, place a value on it and find joy in the discovery and the fixing and all the rest of it, because we need to do that. Otherwise it's not good. And as you say, the joy that you can get from it is unparalleled.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been lovely to have you on.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great.